I think we're live.
I still want to wait a couple of seconds just to see that YouTube video pop up to make
Yeah,
absolutely sure.
there might be a
And
little bit of a
maybe
delay. There we go.
to hear myself talking, so I actually know that the video is working. Oh, yep, good.
Yep,
I
we're
heard
good.
myself. So that's good. All
All
right,
right,
welcome everyone.
finally here.
Oops, sorry. That was me trying to reopen the stream. So yeah, we're trying new things today. Trying to
Yep,
do a little bit different setup. That was a little bit scary, but I guess we're
we
testers.
did
We're
it.
testing new things. So far,
That's
so
right.
good. No bugs.
Yep.
Yeah, welcome everyone who's watching, either live or not live from like the recording. We're
Mm,
glad you're here with us. My name is Filip. I'm tester from Slido, Cypress ambassador, and just like Cypress enthusiast.
yep. Mike Cataldo, working at Lattice as senior SDET and loving every minute of it. If you're interested in Lattice, come check us out. Either our product or um, we're hiring too. So check it
Oh,
out.
nice! You're hiring. Is it
Yep.
a remote thing or
Remote. Yep. Or Bay Area. Yep. We also have an
remote
office out in New
US
York.
only?
US on I don't I know that uh we have a an office in London. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what
Oh,
our
okay.
international hiring is, but certainly check us out. I'm sure if you have something to offer, we we can at least have a conversation. So,
Yeah, well, London office might help with Europe. I guess that might be a good option for folks. So yeah, Lattice, nice. All right, Mike,
what
we
are we
met
talking about
like
today?
oh, we're talking about lots of stuff. I actually made
Yeah.
notes because we met yesterday. For those of you who don't know, this is sort of an improvised thing, but we do
Oh
meet
yeah.
to like, all right, let's see what we can talk about. And there are a lot of things we can talk about today. So I don't know where we should start, Mike. We had like component testing. We talked about recent updates and some common mistakes and some other updates and run all tests. That's like a hot topic since the V10 landed. So we can sort of start anywhere, but I feel like the recent updates might be a good way to start to like
Yeah.
do a recap, almost
Yep.
becoming like a thing in our podcast. Let's see what's new.
Yeah, yeah. So last time, for those who are haven't followed, last time we reviewed 10.0, the big um, latest, major release from Cypress, and that introduced a lot of big changes, mostly around. Would you say it's mostly around component testing? That came out of alpha. It's now in beta, but there were lots of other big changes, UI changes, for sure. Lots of changes there. And so since then, naturally, we should expect a 10.1, a 10.2, kind of thing coming out of the gate because it's a major release. We're going to find, bugs and things. And Cypress is always quick with those patches, from input from the community. So super excited about that. Yeah. So we can go through those things and
Yep.
um,
I actually
first thing.
spun up my browser so I can share the screen and we can like go through the updates. So yeah, let's share the screen. And seems like people should be seeing it. At least that's what the studio says. I kind of like this
Yep.
studio. It looks good. Yeah, maybe we could stay on this. Like the OBS, It's configurable, but it's a hassle.
Yep. We're upgrading. I think
I
it's time
guess
for an
we are.
upgrade.
All right, so yeah, on 1st of June, we actually had the stream on the day of release, and we reviewed all of the new changes, or at least like all of the big ones, or probably a bunch of smaller ones. But look at that, 5 more updates there were, and I think that it feels like Cyprus is slowly starting to up the pace of their releases. I think we mentioned that in one of our podcasts, that when we were like talking about Playwright and Cyprus, and that Playwright is kind of really good with updating regularly. And
Hmm.
the last couple of weeks really felt like Cyprus is actually stepping up their game in that regard as well. They're trying to update regularly. Not sure if that's like uh, if it's a coincidence or intention, but I'd guess that might be an intention.
Yeah. I mean, they certainly don't have, what do you call it, like scheduled releases, right? At least it doesn't seem like it. They just release when they can, and I think that it ebbs and it flows. But I think most of the, at least my perception, having worked at Cypress before, they are releasing based on the needs of the community.
Yep. So yeah, so let's look at the updates. So this one was
Hmm.
actually something I got really excited about because it was the
Yeah.
M1 support, and I actually do have an M1 machine, and I thought like, all right, they have the M1 support. I guess it's going to be a little bit faster. And then I ran the test, and it was like, whoa! It was so
Way
fast.
faster.
It was
Yeah.
way faster. Like I think I have the tweet somewhere. I can spin it up and show it because
What
that
would you
was
say the percentage was?
the percentage. I think
Like
it
the
cut.
percentage increase?
I think it
Like
cut the
50%,
speed
100%?
to like third. Like it was half the time. Like this little test that I have here, I can show it full screen.
Yeah.
It's like 1.5 seconds and 4.5 seconds.
2
Of course, this
minutes to
is just
5 minutes. Yeah.
that's seconds. Just but I guess
Oh,
if
gotcha.
we
Yeah.
had like a longer test, it would translate to that kind of numbers as well.
Yeah.
Because it's like I think on their blog post it said like it cut the test run into half or even more, and like this is the example where it does even more.
Yeah. Now, how does that compare to to Intel processor? Like this is on the same machine, right? Is it just that it was optimized for M1 because it was slower than it should have been, or is having M1 an advantage even over Intel? Do you know what I mean? Do we have
Uh,
those kinds of numbers?
not sure if I do know. Like the thing is that if you want to make use of that great speed, you kind of need to optimize for that. You need to optimize the application you are running, and Cypress
Yeah.
did that. So that was the 10.2 update, and I think compared to Intel, the speed wouldn't be that different with version 10.1. So I did
Yep.
have a my previous notebook. It was like i7, 32 gigs of RAM. It was a solid machine. Uh, but yeah, I think the speed was comparable. When I moved to the M1 Mac, I didn't notice the difference. To be honest, like with Cypress running, which is basically 80% of what I do. I didn't feel like,
Gotcha.
all right, this is super, super fast. I did feel it in some programs, and then I realized, all right, I guess you need to optimize your program
Gotcha.
to run that fast. And and when that optimization happened, you could really feel it. I mean, you can see it. It's ridiculous, the change. And this is just running the test, but also like opening up Cypress, opening the browser. It's just like snap, snap, snap. It's super fast.
Cool. All right, I guess it's time for me to get an M1 Mac then, right?
Yeah, I'd recommend that. It's fun. It's fun just looking at how fast it is.
Yeah. All right, I have to make a pitch to my boss to get that.
Yeah,
I'll say it's gonna increase my productivity by 100%. How about
just show
that?
him the video and I guess he'll be on board.
So what else? What other updates are there?
Oh, I stopped the screen sharing, so let's spin that up. Yeah, so there was one feature update, one more feature update, and that was actually an exciting one, uh, with Cypress Dashboard being more integrated into the Cypress app. So here's this
Why don't you
video.
zoom in a little bit for those of
Yeah,
us that are on mobile? It
let's
might be a
do
little
that.
tricky. There. Oh, that's way better.
So
Nice.
there's a quick video of what that shows. So this is the dashboard, but at the start of the video, which we'll show in a couple of seconds. Here it is. You can sort of see the latest runs and also the duration of how long that test has ran on the dashboard. So they're kind of like integrating the dashboard experience and the Cypress app on your local machine experience together, which I think is a really nice
Cool.
step, because before you needed to like switch to the dashboard to see the analytics and whatnot, to see like what are the slowest tests, what are the flaky tests, etc. And now you kind of
Mm-hmm.
have it right here, and I think that's kind of practical. I haven't been able to play around with this one, because I think there was some minor issue. I just reported to the team, and they were asking about the details, but it was too late for me to respond. So that's kind of my fault. but but I wonder if you could like also in the search box, if you could search for the slowest tests, or order your tests by the slowest one or something like that. That would be nice. So like in this view, I cannot pause this, but on the right side you see the average duration. So I wonder if you could like sort it by the average duration. That might be nice.
Do you have the dashboard native app yet?
Dashboard native app. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
You haven't heard
is
of it?
there a dashboard native app?
Can I share my screen? Let's see.
Oh
I
yeah.
haven't done this on
And
Restream. Let me
I
show you how to
haven't
do it.
I haven't heard about dashboard native
How to
app.
get it. Let's see. Can I share?
Also,
Let's
you'll
see. Oh, it
do like
looks like I have to. It looks like I have to. I may have to do something on Mac. So, okay, I'm kind of lying a little bit. It's not really a native app, but if you go into, maybe you can show them how to do it. But if you go into the Chrome options and then you go to more tools and create shortcut, why don't you do that?
Oh yeah, I know that one. Yeah, I thought you might be tricking us with this one. You can like create a shortcut. Yeah. So yeah, let's do that one. I guess that's a nice tip. So let's show that one. So I have a dashboard over here.
Share,
I
you got to
have,
share your screen again because
I'm not
you passed it
sharing.
over
Oh,
to
sorry,
me and
sorry.
then I didn't.
I forgot to like confirm it. So I clicked on the
We're
button.
doing a different.
Yeah.
Oh, and now I have the permissions up here. Um, uh,
So all right,
figured
I
now
have
it's
the
coming up.
Trello app, which is my project over here, and then you can do like a native Dashboard app. So you'll go create shortcut, and then you'll go Trello, not Cypress Dashboard, right?
And then
So
open a new window.
open as a window, and this
Yep.
will actually opened on the other screen, and voila, I have an app, and I can like save it right to
Yeah,
the
you could
dock.
put it down in your dock there. So you
Uh,
should have an icon in your dock, and then you can right click on it and say leave in what do you call that? Like lock it what do you call it? Keep
yeah,
in
yeah.
dock. Yeah. So I've actually done that with the documentation as well. So I have the Cypress
Oh,
dashboard
that's
and the
nice.
Cypress docs both in the dock because I go to it all the time, both of those things. And so I like to have it open, but I also like to have it kind of out of the way of my other tabs. And so it's super convenient to have
Hmm.
those things open and available. So I mean, obviously you can do like browser favorites or, links, shortcuts from a
Yeah.
desktop or from a toolbar or something like that. I don't know who uses toolbars. I don't really use that, but yeah, another
Yeah,
way to
this
access
is
it.
a good one. I actually used this a couple of times in the past, where instead of using bookmark, you sort of create your own little app. For some reason, I cannot show the dock because it's on my other screen, and I'm not able to move it over here. Not sure why. It's
I think actually if you isn't are you able to show the doc if you just
oh, here it is.
there you
There,
go. Yeah.
Cypress Dashboard. So I do have an app.
There's the
That's
icon.
a nice tip for all the Mac users out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
What else is new in Cypress land?
Actually, yeah. Let's look at the updates. But these were sort of the two things that I noticed. There, in terms of features, because there have been like a lot of bug fixes, obviously with the version 10 landing, there have to be. And so yeah, this is the dashboard. There's a clear button to easily clear the search text. I guess that's sort of a small feature right there.
Why don't
Then
you
there's
blow
the
that
app.
up? Blow that page up a little bit more.
That's also small. Sorry about that.
And then I think if you shrink the window size, it'll actually cut out the two things on the sides. The two elements
Shrink
on the sides, I think. Like
shrink which window size?
if you narrow the browser window, it'll
Oh,
actually
okay. Because I have it on like full screen. So no, because I'm sharing the whole screen.
Oh, I
So
see.
it's
So it won't show the window. Okay, my
yep.
bad.
Yeah. So let's just do it like this. I think it should be pretty visible, like this. So yeah, in
Cool.
terms of updates, in version 10.2, there were obviously the M1 support. That was a great one. And then the file name input field within the create spec modal is now automatically focused. I guess that's sort of a very minor feature here. And with 10.1, then there was an improved error message when going Cypress CT when the testing has not been configured. So I guess again it feels more like a bug fix since it has an issue that was fixed by this. But I guess technically, when you're adding a new thing, it's an added feature. So yeah, not too many updates, but obviously two great ones: the M1 support and the Cypress dashboard inside your Cypress app. Those are really cool.
Cool.
So yeah, I guess that covers the update portion of this podcast. So what about the next topic? What should we land into? Dive into.
So well, why don't you tell us about the last event that you were in with
Oh,
Apple Tools?
yeah. All right. So for those of you who don't know, I there has been really nice conference, Front End Test Fest, really packed with awesome speakers, and I had the privilege to be among those speakers. So that was like really cool. Like many of the people that I've been following for a couple of years now have been actually talking on that event, and it's been great to just be part of that. And yeah, I talked about common mistakes in Cypress tests. So uh, as you may know, I am running a Discord server, and like the biggest, uh, most frequent channel is the I need help channel. So whenever you need help, you go and ask there, and after a while, it sort of starts showing patterns of different things that people do.
Yep.
So I took a liberty of collecting some of those, obviously not mentioning any names or something, but there were a couple of things that were sort of considered like not really the best practices and common mistakes that I see
Yep.
people doing. So that's what I took a look into, and that's what I talked about. So I mean, I can go through them if you like, but obviously you can watch the full presentation. And if you have one of those, we do have some people in the chat already. Hi guys. So if you do have um, something that you see happening a lot, or what you learned recently was a mistake or something like that, you can share that with us, because we want to take a look into. Mike is actually going to add some of the some of the common mistakes. So let me just share the screen. We can just go through the headlines of what was there. Let me share the screen, do the slideshow, and here's the number one. So that was explicit waiting.
Yep.
So that's sort of almost an obvious one. So for anyone who's been working with Cypress for some time, it's nothing new, but it is pretty common for people to not maybe not realize this, or not find this great feature of Cypress, that there's a difference between these two snippets of code. So the
Yep.
example is, all right, get me this button, but this button over here is going to take quite a long time to load. So the obvious solution for that is just to add a wait. So let's wait for 10 seconds and then it'll appear and we're good. But there's a
Yep.
better way, because when we're using this, we're just waiting 10 seconds, doing nothing. And when
Yep.
we do this, we're basically increasing the retriability timeout on this
Get.
command. So we're
Yeah.
getting the button and we're waiting up to 10 seconds. So if it takes 6 seconds or 4 or 1, we're just going to move forward. So that
Yeah.
was not great.
Assuming that it's the get that's failing, right? So like if you are able to successfully get the button, but it's not visible within that default timeout, then you could add the timeout to the should, right? In that case.
Not really. The assertions, what they do. So every should command actually is going to make the previous command retry. So I
Oh,
don't
okay.
think the timeout on the should command does anything. Although it may, if you have like multiple assertions, but if you have a command chain like this where you are querying your DOM and then you try to make sure that it is visible, I think the 10-second timeout will apply here
To
as
the should
well.
as well. Yeah.
Yep. Yep,
Yeah.
I'm
Cool.
pretty sure about this. I may be mistaken, because this is like a good cherry pick over here. The
Yeah.
example, like it gets the button, but it's not visible. But I think
Yeah.
that I'm pretty sure the timeout applies to the should as well.
Now with
Uh,
should, let's just say that you had like a dot get and then a find and then something else in between. And then it ended with the should. And if that should fails, it starts at the top of the chain, right? It starts at that. It doesn't go to the previous, doesn't retry the previous thing. It actually goes to the top of that chain, doesn't it?
Nope, no, actually not. It actually
It
does
just
just
repeats the one
retry
before it.
for the before it. That actually leads to some of interesting cases, and I think that's actually common mistake number 2. So let me click through that. No, that's unreadable selectors. So that's kind of an obvious one. And I talked a little bit about XPaths, how they're kind of unreadable, not enjoying them too much, and basically you can do anything XPath can do with simple Cypress commands. So there it is. But selecting elements improperly. All right, Mike, I have a question for you. Looking at this code, we got CY card. So cards are these white cards in here.
Yep.
Looking at this command, it says should contain text box. And if you take a closer look, you'll see that the text box is actually in both of those cards. So a question for you, which element are we testing?
The first one.
The first one. Why is that?
Because of the EQ0, right?
Yeah, that's a really good assumption, but there's a catch here, because I haven't really told you which of these cards will load first. So that was nasty.
Tricky. tricky. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've never come across that before. Okay. All right, go for it.
Yeah,
What's your
if
solution?
if the first one will load first, then we're testing the first one. But if the second one will load as the first one in the DOM, we will be actually testing this one. So that's and that's what the should command does. So even if we we could go a little further. So if we were making assertion that the text would be, I actually have wrong. We got fix found bugs, that's the first one, and find all bugs. So if we had made an assertion on the first card to fix all bugs, then our test would fail, even if the first card would load. And that is because the should command only makes the previous command retry. So what's going to happen is this get command is going to search for a card. One card rendered, voila, it found it. Let's move on to the next command. And that's going to be the EQ. So just select the first one. All right, there's one. I'm going to select that. And now I'm asserting that it should contain text fix all bugs. So not find all bugs as it's shown here. And it's going to retry. So the should command is not going to pass. Then it's going to move on to the EQ command.
Wait a minute. But it contains the text bugs, though.
Yeah. I'm kind of doing another example here. So this
if you were to actually specify find all bugs, so you're saying?
Yeah, let's do the find, right?
Gotcha.
I'm going to draw. This is I
Yeah.
have this nice little app here. Find.
Right.
Let's do.
Okay, cool. So it's going to find all.
Find. No.
Okay.
Damn it. No. Fix. Fix.
Fix. Okay.
Because we got the text find in here.
Right.
So let's say
right. Okay. So it's
fix.
So it's going to fail because it didn't find fix. Okay.
It's going to fail even if eventually this card with the text fix will appear. And that is because as soon as one command finishes, it's going to move on to the next one. So it's going to. So we get the card, it's going to find this one. Yep. It's going to filter that card. So that's basically an instant operation. And then it is going to do the should command. It's not going to pass because we're looking for that fix, right?
Right.
So what should command is going to do, all right, this didn't go well. Let's retry the previous command,
The
which is
previous
EQ.
command, yeah.
And previous command is just going to
Ah,
work with whatever the get gave it at the moment when it's passed. So it's never
ah,
going to go up the whole chain. And this is something that sort of confuses people sometimes, and this can lead to very flaky tests, because
mm-hmm.
if we have a situation like this where not all of the elements render at the same time, which can happen, then this is something that's going to get you.
Yeah. Yep.
so so yeah,
So
this is a
something
common
else that
mistake.
I see. I'm glad that you brought this up, because I actually didn't realize. I actually thought that it starts at the top of the chain when that should fails. I didn't realize that it went back to the previous one. So that's actually a
Yeah.
good call out. But when I would look at this, I would actually look at this as, like, if I was looking at this in a PR review, I would say, I don't know what's happening here. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
see that there's a card and it's the first one, but
Mm-hmm.
which card am I looking at? I would say just because it's the first card, it's not really how you would describe the test. Like, in other
Mm-hmm.
words, if I were to describe this, I would say, okay, we'll click inside the in progress space, find the card that says all bugs. I wouldn't say find the first
Yeah.
one. If
Yeah.
it just so happens to be the first one, that's that's not a good reason to use it.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
actually, and so one of the things that I recommend is, whenever we're working within modals or within cards like this, I always suggest using within, because especially if we're doing a lot of things within a specific element like a card or a modal or something, because then
Mm-hmm.
as I'm reading that test, I can say, okay, everything that's happening in here is within the context of something. So even though
Mm-hmm.
you're so you have two benefits. You have the benefit of a better selector, right, which would
Mm-hmm.
help avoid this, but also you have the benefit of readability, because I don't need to run the test. For me, readability means not needing to run the test in order to know what it's doing. If I have to run
Mm-hmm.
it, that it's not readable enough, at least in my book. So
Mm-hmm.
using that within can help. So what's your solution to this?
It's I mean, it's interesting because I like never use the within
Oops.
command.
Yeah.
Almost never. I don't think I have it anywhere. So my solution, as I said, there are like multiple solutions here. So since I'm interested in a certain text, I would just go with contains. If I find the card, that's here. But obviously, we could find different kinds of solutions for this, and it also depends on the problem. This is sort of an isolated example of how of what's happening in Cyprus, and I'm searching for a card that contains defined text. So if that's the case, I would just go with the contains, select that, and it would it would find that card. If I
Mhm.
wanted to be more specific, then I would in front of this contains command, I would add the get data cy list, right? Because this in progress thing, that's a list, and I would search inside of that. Uh, Obviously,
Mhm.
depends on what are we testing. But the
Yeah.
within, I get it. It's a good strategy. I For some reason I haven't been using it too often.
Yeah. Depends on what the UI looks like.
Mhm.
I think I wouldn't use within unless I felt like it was going to add readability.
Mhm.
Um, I as well as have that, because, well, at least at Lattice, we are using data selectors. So in most cases, like, I don't need to use within to have better selection. Um, well, I shouldn't say just data size selectors. It's actually good specific data size selectors. You can still you can still have like what you have here, which is like a card. But yeah, so we're still we're pretty good when it comes to selecting specific items,
Hmm.
but within is something that helps with readability for sure. Um,
Yep.
in our case, we have a lot of flows, like we have steps, flows, modals, things like that, and so the
Hmm.
within can really help to kind of illustrate what what flow, what step, what modal we're in
Yeah,
at
sort
a
of
particular
like
time.
encapsulate certain assertion to a context and
Exactly.
make it obvious that all right, we're now here. That's what we're testing, and then we're moving on to some other
Yeah.
thing that's outside of there. Yeah, it makes sense.
What's
Uh,
the next mistake?
Next mistakes: ignoring a
Ignoring
request
requests
in
in
your
your
app.
app. Yep.
So that's a nice one, and I actually showed this on this example of a test that's passing but should not. So the test is trying to get list, and it says it should not exist, and the list is this gray thing over here, and you can
Mm-hmm.
see that the test is passing, right? So it's here, it's all passing, but it should not. And that's sort of there are two problems within here. So the first one is doing the negative assertion. If you are doing that, there are like you need to be careful with what's not supposed to happen as opposed to what is supposed to happen. It's
Hmm.
uh, it can be tricky, and it shows over here because we are asserting that the new list is not, it doesn't exist, and it obviously does exist. And the reason why that is happening, I think I'm showing that on the next slide. Where's my, yeah, is that we are doing the get command while the data in our application is still
Yeah.
loading.
There's a
So there's
request
an
in flight.
API request. Yeah, when it
Yep.
returns, it will render out the content, but we're doing the get before the response will arrive. So that's
Yep.
so yeah, so that's the thing. That was the mistake.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm showcasing that. Never trust a test that you haven't failed. I think I actually skipped this slide in my presentation. But I don't remember where I read it. I guess I skipped it because it didn't have the good flow with the rest of the presentation. But also, I don't remember the author of this sentence. So yeah, but I really like it. Never trust a test that you haven't seen fail. So this is giving you a false positive. It should fail. And obviously, I'm pointing out to the intercept command and the wait command, where you just wait for the request to actually happen and give you a response, and then move on with your test. So that's basically it.
Nice.
So the next one, it's actually interesting. I think I spent most of the time of my presentation here, and that's because I don't have a great way of explaining it. Ideally, when I explain something, I like to make it short. I wasn't able to make it too short, but
Hmm.
uh, the thing is here. So I have a search box in the application, and I am typing the text for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So FOR. And we got a couple of elements here. We actually have two, right? So trash found bugs and search for critical bugs. So when I type in the for, that's actually going to filter out just this second element, right?
Yep.
But while I'm still on FO, it's going to show two. So the problem is that uh, every one of the keystrokes is going to trigger an API request. And what's
Right.
happening with this request? So the F The first one is going to give us 2 results. The second one is going to give us 2 results. And the third one is going to give us 1 result. But that'll
Interesting.
happen when the response will come back. But since we are not really doing an intercept or anything with this, what's going to happen is that as soon as we finish typing, we get to the next command. So that's the get command. So we are going to get the result item at the moment when there will still be 2 of them. And this is going to happen. The infamous detached from DOM.
Yep.
And that's the solution, but let me get back to the code. And the reason for that is that we're selecting the result item, this EQ0. Again, we're searching for the first one. It should have the text box. So in case we're going to find more, but we are interested in the first one, we want to make sure that the top result is the one we are expecting. We could write the test like this, but what's going to happen as so as we are getting that result item, it still may be too soon. The request didn't come back. So what this will end up doing is going to select the first of those 2 elements. And when it does that, it's going to make the assertion. It should contain certain text, and it's not going to. And while it is trying to retry and make sure that it does contain the text, then the thing is going to re-render. The element we had selected with this get command is going to get detached from DOM because it's going to just disappear, and we end up with the error. So that's what that does. Was that clear? Because it's kind of a. I'm still finding a good way to explain this. I think I did
Yeah.
explain it, but it wasn't so smooth as I would like it to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's kind of 2 things at play. There's DOM re-rendering, which in itself there's multiple problems that can occur there. It's not necessarily the detach. There's other problems that you can run into. And then
Yep.
there's the detach piece. Like I think that in itself requires its own explanation, I think, cuz like
Mm-hmm.
what happens in Cypress is as soon as it finds that an element, imagine you find an egg and you put it in a basket, okay? And then you go to retrieve that same egg. You're not going to go find another set of eggs or find that egg. You've already
Yep.
found it. It's in your basket. You go to retrieve that now and it's gone. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and even though that same egg or similar egg is out there in the field, you're still only
Yep.
going to that back to that same thing. So it's kind of that's how Cypress works. I think it's important to understand that with Cypress, when you're getting an element, once it finds it, it's that specific element, and it's not going to, and it's always going to reference that same thing.
Yep.
And so that's what detached means. And the solution to that is to um, rather than try to chain a lot of things like a get and an EQ0 and a find and and all that other stuff, just try to put it in one in one um, in one
One
command,
query. Yeah, one
right? One
command. Yeah.
query. And in this case, it could probably be like a sci.contains. You could do that. We kind of covered that a little bit in the other one there with the EQ0. So I think in the context of that, it kind of helps to simplify it. But then rendering in itself, like, is also something that should be, because that problem where you're actually typing, actively like typing and there's requests being made. I think that itself can be kind of a snag, um, and probably should require its own kind
Yeah.
of explanation, and maybe have a best practice with that. What's your solution?
I like the metaphor that you use. Like you go somewhere, get the basket of eggs, and just leave. I guess that's gonna good metaphor of how you can put it, of what's happening when you're executing those Cypress tests or those Cypress commands. My solution over here was basically to make a sort of a guarding assertion first, and then move on to the assertion you want to make.
Oh,
So
that's a good one. Yeah.
if you can assert that there's a change going to a change happening on your DOM, then you should make it part of your test. You might need it in order to stabilize the test, at least in this case where you're working with the search box, which is just going to fetch the data from the server. In this case, you might want to have something like this. So yeah,
I have a couple of ideas
yeah,
that I want to throw at you. So what if you did this? What if you did this is kind of okay, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I want you to
yeah.
tell me what you
Go
think.
ahead.
So when you're typing in that, you pointed out that there's a request that's being made with a query in the as a query param.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you had a intercept where when it makes that query, instead of allowing it to make the request for a partial like FO, you intercept it and you send in FOR, regardless of what you're actually typing in there. So that way
It,
it always has that the right value. Is
I
that
mean,
would that be
it
like a
would be
screwy test? Is that too hacky or what?
it would be kind of funny because I would what would end up happening. I would be sending three requests with the same text on the server. So I guess the testing the solution of the testing problem would kind of work. What I thought of doing instead is to intercept the request that actually has the whole phrase, so the for, and to intercept the request that has the query of for, and wait for that, and then make the assertion. That could be one of those solutions. I
Oh
mean, you
yeah,
can
I
do
like that
kind of
better.
funky things with with intercept, so that could also work. But at least for me, it would feel like all right, but now I'm sort of sending three same requests to the database, and maybe
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like that's what I want to do. But
I like
I
that
mean,
though.
it
I
could
like the
work.
weight for the for. I like that better.
Yeah,
You could also block the other ones. The first two requests in that situation.
yeah,
That's I know
yeah.
that's
That's
possible. But
that's
yeah, I
that's
see what
pretty
you're
good.
saying. Well, with the have length one, right?
Hmm.
What if as you're typing, it only comes out with one. What if it does succeed and it finds the one, but it's not the one that contains search for critical bugs? Wouldn't that fail?
Yeah, that would
Because
fail.
it's
That would
right.
fail. But
Like you're
in this
assuming that
test,
when you do that sci.get, it's going to come up with more than one on the first go around.
yeah, my assumption is that I'm testing the search box. I know what the data is, and I want that search box based on the input. I'm asserting that it's going to give me some exact output. So in that way, if it did return one element and it wouldn't be with the text that I'm searching for, then I would want that test to fail.
Cool.
So yeah. All right, I got three more inefficient command chains. This was sort of like to show everyone that there are actually parent commands and child commands. And
Mm.
oftentimes I see a long chain like this. And I mean, it works, but it doesn't really make too much of a sense. Because when you take a look into the chain over here, so this one is going to start a new chain. Then we click on the thing. And this get button is again going to start a new chain. So it feels like there should be a CY before
Mm-hmm.
that because we're starting a new chain. And then again, with the location, that's a parent command, is just going to start a new chain. So it feels like it should have a CY
Yeah.
before that. And it makes it kind of helps with whenever you are writing your test to make chains that make sense. They're much more readable, and at the same time, if you know what the parent command is and what the child command is, it can help you avoid these weird situations where
Yep.
when you're ignoring that and just not getting the expected results because you feel like this is one chain of command, and it's, for example, this get command, it when it is inside the chain, it might feel like it should just search within this create board element,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So
If you did, yeah. So a get is not a child command. It's a parent command only. If you wanted to
yes,
get something within something else, you would use find. Right?
yes,
It's find, isn't it? Yeah, find. Um, yeah, and I think I can see how somebody just starting out with Cypress would do this. Where I think it would be where I think it would get you in trouble is when you go to debug, because one of the things that you're doing when you're debugging is you're seeing, okay, what is passed to the next thing, right? So in Cypress, there's the notion of a subject, and
yeah,
that's the thing that's passed through to the next command. And
yeah,
so when you see a dot something and it's not sci, you're assuming that, or at least it's intuited that the thing that's before it is passing something to it, right? So in the
yes,
case of the dot get, nothing's being passed to it, and so it's going to be kind of tricky to diagnose it. It's going to take a little bit more. Like, it's not impossible. It's just what would you say, like mental load, cognitive load, right? To try to read through this and diagnose it. So cool. I like that. I've never seen that before, but that's
there's another interesting thing about this is that there are actually three types of commands in Cypress. So parent commands, child commands, and there's also dual commands, which
right.
behave differently based on where they are
Right.
in the chain. So contains would be a great
Ah.
example of this. So if you
Yep.
do cy contains, it's just going to find an element on the whole page. And if you go get and contains, then the contains is actually just going to search within the context of what the get command returns. So
Yeah.
that's a good example of why those chains actually matter. And I didn't include it in here because
That's
I feel
good.
like it might
That's a
be
good
too
call out.
complex.
Nice.
All right. So we got people in chat. We got greetings from Ukraine. Hi from Slovakia, and from US. And Danny is still waiting for the surprise. Did we promise a surprise on this on this stream? I don't remember if we did promise something special, because this message feels like we should reveal something surprising. And I'm not
Nope.
not sure if we made that promise. All right, so yeah, we're not
I don't remember.
no surprises here. Yeah, we're basically talking about what's new, and we're talking about common mistakes now. So, oh, we got a question also for like the previous thing when we were typing 4. Would EQ0 work if we added the delay is 0? That the delay is 0 when typing 4. Oh, haha, that's a good one. I'm not sure if you noticed I had a video I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, something like that. Did you know that when you use type command and you type in various keys that you have, that there's a delay of 10 milliseconds between each keystroke?
Right.
You knew that? Because I
Yeah.
didn't. I found out like very late, like a couple of weeks ago. So I made a video about that. Look at that, I didn't know. And the interesting thing about this is, so if you want to like simulate sort of a paste um, function, so copy and paste. So if you want to just do that paste, you can just go type the text and then give it an
With
option
0
of delay
delay.
0. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So that was what was the video about. And basically, this question is asking about whether the situation with this one, with the search box over here, would change if
Yep.
we added
That's a
uh,
great idea.
and I actually tested that. And when I tested that, I immediately realized that, all right, this makes sense. It wouldn't make a difference. It would still trigger 3 requests, and that's because even when I do the delay 0, what Cypress will do, it will add individual keystrokes, it will trigger individual keystrokes for every character anyways.
It
So
wouldn't work for your particular thing, I
it
think,
won't work for
because
my particular, yeah.
there are different components out there that don't necessarily trigger on a type. There's like
Yep.
a delay, there's a almost like a debounce kind of thing, where it won't
Yes.
respond right away.
Yes. There's and there are like different events. There's composition start, composition end, which are used, for example, in material design, Angular kind of stuff. I tested an application like that, and I was surprised to find out that within the input there was a composition start and composition end um event, and this is sort of I don't know how that exactly works, but it sort of helps out with forms and typing, and I guess it has
Mm.
the ability to find out whether he stopped typing and finished writing the message, and maybe it even has that debounce in it. All right, so yeah, thank you for the question.
Cool.
And overusing UI was the next mistake. So I'm checking all the links here in the navigation bar, and I'm doing that with contains, click, go to the location, make sure it's block, then go back, then go on about page, do the same, contact page, do the same. So that's kind of the anti-pattern which I showed.
Mhm.
And an interesting thing about this is that this is actually not checking if we are live, because you can check the location path name and you can easily navigate to a page, but that page would return 404, and the path name would still be like this, would still pass, but the page itself would give you a 404. So
Mm.
this is what I wanted to point out. So then one of those solutions might be, all right, so let's check the content. So let's say there is a content element in each of those pages, and we want to make sure that it's visible, so it's not giving us like an error message, right? And this might work, but also if we have a content element on the homepage, we might get into trouble, because again, as soon as Cypress finishes doing a command, it will move on to the next one. So what happens when we click on that blog link? We do the click, and then immediately we go to the get content and make
Mhm.
sure it is visible. So this can
Yep.
actually be passing, but checking this site instead of this site. So
Right.
so that's again something I wanted to point out. And yeah, basically I suggested, how about you just check the links? because you're going to have the confidence of that page actually working. You're not going here and there. It's super simple, and plus you don't, if you just want to check whether those links are live, this is a good way to do that. You don't actually have to visit that page and open it and etc.
Mm.
Because you might be actually opening those blog, about, and contact page on some other tests where you are testing the blog or the about or the contact page.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I think, right. Yeah. I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. Yeah. I think to kind of add to that, it's somewhat similar to this is, that's a common mistake, is actually visiting multiple pages in a single test. So like, say for example, you have, it's a bank, and
Mhm,
you have on your homepage, you have uh an account balance, and it's,
mhm,
$20,
mhm,
and your test is to, go to another page and deposit $10. So
mhm.
the bad test, in my opinion, is you go to the page, you add the $10, then you visit the main page and you verify that your account is now $30 if you deposited
Mhm.
10. Um, the problem with that is that, in my opinion, it overuses the UI. So now you've unnecessarily extended your test. Um, the chances of the the front end not showing that is low, especially if you already have a test for that main page. So you already have a test
Yep.
for that main page. You're already, maybe seeding or setting up some data to ensure that, the account balance shows correctly. So why have another test that also goes to that page to verify that it's rendering correctly? You should just have separate pages for each one,
Yep.
rather than double test it. That's something that I often see is, someone will do something on one page and then go to another page or refresh that page to verify that what they did stuck, when they
Mhm.
already have another test, or they're going to have another test, or they should have another test that actually verifies that data is rendering correctly.
Yeah, I actually had this discussion today with one person, whether you should write short tests or longer tests. And this is something I'm not able to answer really well because I've been playing with both, and yet I'm still undecided. Um,
Hmm.
I think if you have a feature, for example, a to do list, and that to do list can add an item, edit that item, and delete that item, it kind of makes sense to keep it in one test just for the sake of speed, because it's sort of a single user story. So it depends
Hmm.
on how you define that user story, but you could make an argument that all right, I want to write a user story that will go something like: user can use a to-do list, which is very broad definition of a user story. But
Yeah.
then you can sort of like write a single test, and if you were to split it into three tests, where you would have one for adding to do items, second one for editing, then the third one for deleting that item, I guess you would spend some time on the visit page. Yes, you would have on your report, you will see all three actions being checked off or failing, depending on how that goes.
Hmm.
But not sure if that's good enough. Good enough benefit. I don't know how often it happens that when you create that you're able to edit something but not be able to create. I mean, yeah, I guess it might be a good, might be something that may happen, but also something you need to deal with if you want those three tests to be separate. Then in the first test, good, you just start with an empty to-do list, create an item. Then in the edit, you want to add some kind of before hook or something like that, some preparation, some arrangement of that test, where you will first create that to do so you can later edit it. And that will be the same for the delete test. You need to first have the item in order to be able to delete. So it sort of adds unnecessary complexity to that test. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess you can just make three parts of the same it block divided with comments or log command or something like that, or just sections, and yeah, and just be done with it within a single test.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's always a balancing act, right? So
yeah,
anytime
definitely.
you're interacting with the UI, so okay, I think one of the reasons why I am successful with end to end is because I also shy away from using end to end or from using the UI, more
Mhm.
more often, because every time you interact with the UI, you're adding risk, you're adding time, you're adding the possibility of flakiness, right? You're and so every time, so you have to look at it as that, like, what is the benefit of me doing that? So like you just explained, well, if I split it up into multiple things, I have to worry about data setup for each one because you don't want tests to depend on the previous test, right? So I have to set
Mhm.
up my data before each thing, and then there's the time involved in, well, obviously setting that up, but also in the runtime, the execution time of that test. So it's just not worth it. So I'm just going to do this as one thing. Like, there's a calculation that happens there, and
Yeah,
that's why I don't think that there's necessarily an answer to that. Like, should I have short tests? Should I have long tests? There isn't
yeah,
really an answer. It depends. It depends on that, and I think that's why you and I do really well, and quality in general is somewhat of an art. There is a little bit of calculation that goes into it. It's not something that you can just read a manual and it'll just tell you, you should have short tests, you should have long tests. It really depends. And so, those are the kinds of questions that you need to ask. I think in flows like that, one of the things that I usually suggest is, I'll suggest, well, why don't we do this? If we want to test the flow, because it's important to test that whole thing, let's just go ahead and do that. But if there's something specific, maybe in each step, let's separate that out into tests. So
mhm,
it's difficult to pull something out of the example that you gave me.
yeah,
Like, if, say, you weren't just deleting something, maybe you were deleting a completed task as opposed to an uncompleted task, or you
yep,
edited and, or you tried to edit a task that was already deleted, or things like that. Those are things that need their own, that should have their own test, because if you start adding on top of that same flow, testing, a lot of different things, and you have this ginormous test, and as we know, those big tests are more likely to kind of flake out or fail.
yeah.
um, yeah.
We got a question in the chat asking about the fifth example. So it's before we jump into the last one, I'd like to answer that, because Patrick is asking whether in this example, when we are if we were to intercept each request and change its query to 4, so the thing I guess you suggested, so all of those 3 requests would be 4, wouldn't the first selected element by EQ0 no longer exist after second and third query? So I guess you mean by first element, you mean this found, and that's true, because if we take a look at our API, the 4 query with the text 4 is going to return this. It's going to return one element, and this element is going to be rendered out here. So yeah, so 3 times the same thing would happen, and then we would every time we would just have this one appear. And EQ0 is selecting the first element, so we're numbering by index. So EQ0 would still be this one. So hopefully that answers your question, but feel free to elaborate if that wasn't a good enough explanation for you. All right, so moving on to the last mistake. Oh yeah, repeating the same set of actions. And basically what I wanted to say here is that this is a common pattern that many of the tests follow, the arrange, act, assert. And we do actually, as testers, we do tend to repeat ourselves a lot in the arrange part. So this is so yeah. Just jump into the example. So let's say we have a custom command that will do the login and it will go through the login. And this login command would be called before each of our 4 tests over here. And we would be repeating the same set of actions. I mean, we're kind of doing a good job already with abstracting that to the login. So we're not repeating the code, but we are repeating the actions. So my suggestion here is just use the new session API. It's awesome, right? So when you do that, this set of commands is just going to be ran once. And then the state of the browser at the end of this sequence of commands is going to be cached and then used in all of those other tests, making them like 2 times faster. As a result. Plus, I mentioned that this is how you turn that on, and there's also session and origin. So if you have like origin of accounts Google or something, then as a bonus, you're solving one extra problem, which is rate limiting and reCAPTCHA and all that nice stuff that will disable you from trying to send thousands of requests to a server, which Google and all of other major services are good at. So this will actually get rid of that pain point. So if you go with the origin, do the login over there and wrap it inside the session command, then you basically just do it once, and it's awesome. So you're not going to repeat the same set of actions. Yeah, so that was basically the presentation, and I just wrapped it up at the end with like read the docs. You can actually have that twice if you noticed. Oops. So it's over here and over here. So read the docs. Definitely read the docs.
Nice.
And yeah, come visit my workshop. That was a very important message.
Cool.
of that one. So yeah, what's your opinion, Mike? What are the common mistakes in your book or in
Oh
your
man,
observation?
there's a lot, almost a whole podcast worth. So maybe I'll give a preview and then we can have another one. Let's see. And then so maybe I can list some and then we can pick. So
Yeah, all right.
common mistake number 1, using page object model, which you've already touched on before. And for anybody that's here that follows you, you know, they already know where that goes. Mistake number 2 is writing tests that should be testing components, or rather writing end-to-end tests as if you're testing a component. So in
Ooh,
other
that's
words,
a
if
good
you're writing
one.
a test where you're verifying CSS, you know, or you're verifying that too many things are visible, right? Like, let's make sure this is here and this is here and this is here, and you know, and that type of thing. Or if you're testing something specific within you know, that's specific to a component. So in other words, you know, one of the things that you should ask yourself is, okay, if I'm testing this one thing and it can be tested on another page as well, then then you probably should be thinking about maybe testing it at the component level. Because
Mhm.
if you're thinking about testing it, most likely somebody else is also thinking about testing it. And what if you have now 7 different tests that do the exact same thing, because that component is shared among different pages? So
Yeah.
that's one thing. Um, Mistake number 3, not keeping Cypress updated. I think people get behind on their dependencies, and I think when it comes to Cypress v10, like, I'm not on Cypress v10 yet. I'm also going to be um, I'm also going to be going on paternity leave in a month, and I have other things I'm trying to wrap up. So I don't know that I'm going to be getting our project on V10 yet.
Mhm.
I might, but other than that, I think if there's a minor update, just go ahead and get it. Read the change log, make sure you understand what those benefits are, because then you can start taking advantage of those benefits. Don't just blindly do it every time you upgrade. Read the change logs, are very good.
Yeah.
And make sure that you're accommodating for those, because they might fix things that were previously broken. So understand it, and I think it also helps you to really understand Cypress too, when you're getting to know the kind of bug fixes that are in there.
Oh,
um
that's actually a
yeah.
good one, and I'd recommend, like, Cypress is open source. If you are having some kind of trouble with Cypress, chances are you're not alone. If you are alone, then it's good to open the issue. But if you're not alone in some area, it's really like GitHub has this functionality to sort of follow an issue, and whenever there's an update on that issue, you can get an email. Of course, that can be annoying because people are writing like +1 messages and stuff like that. But once the issue actually is going to move and it's closed, etc., you'll get sort of a notice ahead. And when an issue closes, you get like maybe 2 or 3 days until that gets to the release. So you'll get an early notification that there's a release coming, so you can get
Mm-hmm.
excited and then test it out. So that's how I found out about the M1 thing, because I
Mm-hmm.
subscribed to the issue. I saw it's closed and I felt like, oh yes, it's coming. It's coming really soon. So as soon as
Yep.
it came out, I tested it out. I made a video and basically beat Cypress in like letting the world know, because I
Mm-hmm.
made that tweet, and like 3 days later they wrote the blog post. So I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm faster.
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's how I found out
Continue
about
with
V10,
yours.
is I did that. Yeah, what was that?
Continue with the list. So you're at
Yeah.
number 4.
um Next one is not using the before each title argument. So in
Oh, okay.
before each,
I
there's
may be guilty
actually
of that.
there's actually 2 arguments. The first one is optional, and then there's, of course, the callback,
The
right?
callback, yeah.
Now, um, to kind of go the something that also goes along with this one, is doing too much in a before each hook. Because what
Hmm.
what tends to happen is you do a lot of different things, and then when you're reading the test later, you're like, what the heck is this thing doing? But with before each, they're synchronous. They're going to run one after another after another. So instead of having one big before each, have multiple before eaches, and then use the title argument to title each one. So let's just
Hmm.
say I'm logging in the first one, and I'm setting up some data in the second one, and I'm doing something else, right? And split those up, and then that way it's much more readable. Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's see.
But the thing is, with the before
Yeah.
each hook, when you have a title in it, it doesn't show in the
It
Cypress app.
doesn't. It does not. Yeah, I actually brought that up when I worked there, and unfortunately, like some other bugs, it just wasn't. It just didn't get enough. Um, those
I
wheels just didn't get
guess
enough
it's up
squeak.
to
So
us, Mike. Cypress is open source, so we need to make
I need
that
to
pull
add that
request.
in there. Yep. Yep. I've considered it a few times for sure. Um, the next thing is misuse of Cypress's promise-like nature. So one of the
Okay.
things that I'll see is I'll see like a sci.get and then dot then and then do some things. But you don't if you're not passing anything to the next thing, you don't necessarily need that dot then. You can just do another command after that. And having chaining, like, the nesting these dot thens are really not necessary unless you actually need access to whatever it is you're passing in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. Um, misuse of data. So this is a huge mistake that I see.
Okay.
With and test data is kind of a big thing. I think it actually deserves its own episode, and we could talk more about it. But like one of the things that I've seen with Flake involves one test modifying the environment, and then as a result of that modification, some other test is relying on that data to not be modified, and so it
Oh yeah.
fails.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really common. So what one of the things that I've done at Lattice, my day job, is I've said, okay, we're going to see the database with data. If needed, you don't touch it, and if you do touch it, it's got to be called out, or we have to, be deliberate. Or you have to have something that resets that data. And with Cypress, you want to let your state dangle, right? Dangling state, and do it in a before each and reset
Yep.
that data every time. And we can get more into that definitely in the future. But like, yeah, if it's seeded data, don't touch it. If you need data, if you need to modify some data that's seeded, just set it up yourself, like through the API, for example, and
Mhm.
modify it in your test. And that way it doesn't touch anything else. So that's
Yeah.
something that I see very, very often.
It's Yeah. Go ahead.
And similarly, like setting up data with one test, and then the next test uses the data that the previous
Oh yeah.
test set up. That's a huge mistake.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I was just starting with automation, this was one of the really good advice I got early in like the test automation journey. You okay, man? I hope you're like not dying right on the stream.
We're good. We're good. I just
All
took a
right.
sip and went down the wrong pipe. We're all good.
Yeah.
It's a live show. Carry on.
Yeah. So one of the early advice I got when starting with test automation was to make sure that all of your tests are isolated so they don't depend one on another. And that was like really good advice to
Yep.
get early. And another
Yep.
one, think about those tests being in parallel, because you will get there one day, and if you don't think about it now when you're starting, we're going to do a lot of work on those tests when they start running in parallel, and that comes very close with the fact of how to manage the data and how do you manage that within the test, because you can seed your database, but if you are seeding database and you're running in parallel, then you might get into trouble, especially if that database is not uh, like locally running, and you're just seeding that within the thread that you're running on.
Yeah. Well, actually, the solution to that, and one of the things that eliminates that headache. So I have a couple of things to add to that. So first, if you're going to run in parallel, um, each parallel node should have its own database, preferably, so that you're
Hmm.
not sharing, because that can get unwieldy. However, what you should assume is in the future, rather than say your test might run in parallel in the future, is your test might run out of order in the future.
Oh yeah.
Because when you do run, especially like, I'm subscribed to the the dashboard, I'm sure you are, like with smart orchestration, it's going to run certain tests in certain containers or in certain machines, I think is what they call it. And so when that happens, like your tests aren't going to necessarily run together. And so
Yeah.
when each test is relying on the one before it or the one ahead of it, you know, or affects the one ahead of it, then once you implement smart orchestration, that all falls apart. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing that comes to mind when talking about dashboard, we talked about whether we want longer or shorter tests. So if you write longer tests, you're going to pay less for dashboards. That's an advantage, because dashboard is actually counting the number of tests. So you
oh
can have a
really?
single test that will just run forever. You're going to pay just for one test.
But if as a result of doing one test, you have to do you pay for retries?
I think it's is it a separate pricing? Don't know.
Like no, I mean like okay, so let's just say because I think you pay for test runs. So if a
Oh
test
yeah.
retries,
Oh, you don't pay for
does that
retries.
count as another run?
Nope. No, no, no. It actually that's kind of nice. So you can retry a test. It still counts as one test.
Okay, cool. So I was
So
gonna say
yeah,
there's that, and
not
then the other
paying for
cost.
mistakes.
Yeah, well, and then the other cost too is like development, right? Like if you're paying for development time because your test is not running correctly,
Yeah.
it's most likely more expensive. So careful there.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, so do you have any more of
oh, I've
the
got tons
mistakes?
more.
Oh, you
I've
got
got tons
tons.
more.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Some of them actually do that I'm skipping kind of fall along the same lines of the ones that you did, like frequent use of arbitrary weights, um,
Hmm.
and not appropriately waiting for API request response. Talked about that. Um, and so another common mistake is um, skipping broken tests. And now it's okay to skip a broken test, but what are you doing when you do skip it? Are you leaving some kind of comment? Is there any kind of accountability to make sure that you're going to fix that test later? And what happens when you rely on that test and now you've committed, you've made changes and you've pushed it to production, but that now that test isn't working? Are you um, factoring that into the risk in a release, right? Are you manually testing that? So just
Hmm.
outright skipping a test and or commenting out a test, which is even worse, or deleting a test because it's not running. What are you doing as a result? How are you holding yourself accountable to ensure that the test is going to be fixed in the future, and that you're factoring in the additional risk.
What you can do with
Um,
that
yeah.
is to have an ESLint rule that is going to warn you when you have a skip in
Yeah.
your text. And there are
Hmm.
certain tools that sort of allow you to check on either on pre-commit or anywhere else where you want that to count the number of warnings, and you set a threshold of how many warnings you're able to have. So that's also
Hmm.
kind of a nice
Cool.
solution. So you do have the flexibility, but at the same time you're held accountable when you're using that too much. And yeah, so you can choose to go for a low hanging fruit in those skipped tests, but still you're kind of forced to uh, do some maintenance on your tests and not forget about those skipped tests.
Hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
Um,
You want to
should we keep
continue, or
going?
you want to wrap it up? I was actually thinking about like uh, you can tell. what kind of common mistakes you have, and then we could wrap it up. But then you say like, oh, I have tons of them, and
I actually only have like a handful more, so
oh
we
yeah,
can go
well,
through them real
let's
quick.
go through them. It's a really
Let's
interesting
finish.
list. By the way, I'm going to hold you accountable on that. You know, that blog we talked about, and I think you got some great content over here.
I
So
know. Yep. I've gotta get on that blogging bandwagon
yeah,
and get
sorry,
back on
sorry
that
for
horse.
bringing
And
that up in front of the
no, you're
audience.
right. You're right. I've got to do it. People are counting on me. People are counting on me. And
Yeah,
I
and
have
this
no
is great
excuse to.
content.
I have lots
Put
of
that
content.
together.
Yep. It's all written down. It's internal
Yeah.
docs at Lattice. I think
Oh, nice.
they're the beneficiaries of this of all this wisdom here. So let's see. Let's see the next thing. Okay. Um, the next mistake 200. Misuse of comments. So one of the things that I see commonly with comments is one, adding comments to your test when your test should be saying what's in your comments. In other words, if you
Hmm.
have comments, consider that maybe your test isn't readable enough and that you should be.
Okay.
So if you have to add a comment that says this selects this thing and clicks on it, then you're not writing a good test, or
Hmm.
you're not um you're counting too much on your comments to explain what's happening. You really
Hmm.
should get into a habit of writing tests that explain itself, and are
Hmm.
readable so that you don't need those comments. And as a result, you're going to have better tests. Um, yeah, as a result. Then the opposite is not commenting where you should. If, say, you create a custom command and you have some code in another, module, you have plugins or other things like that, you should be adding comments to explain what that function or that
Yeah.
command is doing. If you're not using TypeScript, TypeScript is a huge thing there. Along with commenting or documenting, your types can add that documentation. So, in
Or the
combination with types
JS doc.
and docs, yeah, now you can say, okay, this custom command, I know exactly what it does when I'm using it because now that IntelliSense is telling me so, right? Um,
Yeah, that's kind of a it's a really good thing to sort of test out on new people in the team. And there's no better compliment you can get, like when a newcomer comes to the repo, is about to write their first test and has no questions, or even like tells you, oh, it was very clear to understand. That's like a
yep,
top top compliment you can get on your code, and in terms of like
yep.
comments and internal documentation.
Yep. Or even yourself. I mean, you go away for a
Oh yeah.
week, or you don't touch something for a bit, and then you come back, and you're like, what the heck is this doing? That's a good sign that
Yeah.
you got to clean things up. Um, Another mistake is test spec disorganization and not establishing some kind of rule or standard to organize your tests. So,
All
one of the
right.
things that I do is I actually came up with a standard, right or wrong. This is just how I'm doing it. You can do it however you want. But, like I said, each test is going to be organized based on the page that you're testing. So, if I'm
Mhm.
visiting um this route A/B/C, then that test is going to be located in A/B/C or A/B/C
Yeah.
dot spec.ts or js,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that way I know, okay, where am I testing this page? I know exactly where to go to find that test.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not doing that, then when it comes time to actually finding tests, it's gonna get unwieldy. And if you don't have some kind of standard, you're gonna be checking in multiple places for the same tests. I think it's good to come up with some kind of standard right from the beginning, um, and organize your tests. Another thing that you can do too to help organize is use tags. Gleb came up with a good what is it, Cypress grep or something like that.
Yes.
The grep
Yes.
plugin.
It's the
Yep.
best plugin out there,
Yeah. Yep.
along with
And so
Cypress Real Events. Those are like top notch.
real events. I
You're
haven't
not
used that one
using
yet.
those. Yeah, you
We
you
might
haven't.
have to.
You
Wait,
didn't have
no,
the
I
need
haven't
to.
needed to. I haven't needed
Yeah.
to, but we
Okay.
should have an episode about that. We should have an episode that talks about that. So organize your specs. Let's see. And then okay,
You got another one?
I've got two more. I got two more.
All right.
Um Next one is not running the right tests at the right time.
Oh, that's a good
So,
one. I like that.
yeah. So, if let's just say that you have a CI process where you're running all of your end-to-end tests,
Mm-hmm.
and one of those tests is broken or doesn't pass, and you say, "You know what? This is okay if it fails. Let's go forward." That's a signal that you probably shouldn't be running that test. If it's not going to stop production, then
Yeah.
why are you running that test every single time for every push? You
Yeah.
know, separate your tests and run the right ones at the right time. If you're running all your tests and it takes 30 minutes to run through it, that shouldn't be halting production and running. I mean, you're probably paying for a lot of CI time and then dashboard time and all this other stuff. And then when it does fail, you just skip it or you don't care. What's the point of running that test in the first place?
Yeah.
By using things like test tagging, you can actually tag tests as smoke test or priority test or whatever, right? So that way
Yeah.
you're running the right tests at the right time. Run tests locally. I'm going to run these tests. When I'm on CI, I want to run these tests. On a nightly basis, I want to run these tests, right?
Yeah.
Running the right tests at the right time will help save on cycles, will help save your sanity, and will help to react appropriately to failures. If you're constantly running unnecessary, small, flaky tests all the time, what's going to happen is you're going to get used to just ignoring those tests, and eventually folks are going to start to wonder what's the point, what's the value in these tests if we're not
Yeah.
reacting to it. So start, reorganizing and running the right tests at the right time.
Yeah, and it's actually something that it's an advice again I would try to give early to people, because as the test suite grows,
As it
it's
scales, yep.
really hard to like organize 500 tests. Believe me, I've done that. So it's a lot
Wow.
of work to like add tags to them. I mean, if you're adding tags and you went the wrong direction, you can still rewrite them. It's much harder to like start from scratch
Yeah.
with the tags when you already have like a couple of hundred tests. So yeah, this is a good one. I
Yep.
like that very much.
Cool. All right,
All
last
right.
one.
Oh yeah.
Not using the Cypress dashboard. I think that's huge. I think Cypress would really like that. Obviously, it's a paid service, but
Yeah.
not using it is a big mistake. Um, in the case of Lattice, hopefully they don't kill me for saying this, but like they were paying for it for 2 years and they weren't using it.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that can happen, especially if you don't really understand what the dashboard does, where to go to see it, what's the advantage, and everything, how to fully use it, then yeah, that makes sense. So if you're subscribed to it and you're not using it, it's a huge mistake. Understand how, start getting used to using it to debug your tests, and understand how it can be beneficial. Obviously,
Yeah.
these podcasts and your courses too, can help with that. And if you're not subscribed, consider the value. I'm not being paid to say this. Like, consider the value of it. So consider the return on investment. They do provide, if not a free tier, at least a free something. And if they
Mhm.
don't, ask for it, because I think once you actually see what that value is, then at least you can make the decision whether or not it's worth it. Obviously, there has to be some ROI. You should not subscribe to the dashboard if it's not providing you the return on investment.
Yeah.
But understand what that return on investment is, or rather understand what the return is, before negating the investment and saying, well, it's a paid thing. I don't think I need it. Just try it first, see what the reward is, and then make the decision. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because if you need to report the results of the test somewhere, and you often need to analyze them. And if
look at
you're
trends,
using,
right?
yeah, and look at trends. That's where Cypress really shines, because if you connect your Cypress test to like an Mocha Awesome or some other reporter, I mean, it's going to do its job with the like giving you the results. And if that's good enough for you, that's good enough for you. But yeah, analyze the trends, analyze what's flaky, right? What are the tests that are taking way too long? How big is your test suite and how it grows over time? Those are like the analytics that are inside the dashboard are really great. You can build tools to look at the videos or screenshots and have all that assets. You can just download them from S3 or somewhere where you store that. That works, right? But the trends, that's actually, as your team grows, as you are going to have more and more people in the team, more and more people doing the automation, this is something that will become more and more important. And at
Mm-hmm.
that time, when your company is that big, having a tool that you just pay for with money instead of paying with developers' time, which honestly is much more expensive than paying for a
Mm-hmm.
tool, like a couple of $100 a month. Consider developer, right? That's a couple of thousands of bucks per month, depending on where you are in the world. uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to be more expensive. So having that service, yeah, I mean, I've been using it. It's been great. It did help a lot, and it's still helping. So yeah, I'm on board with that. And yeah, nobody's paying me to do that, although I do have the add-on, but that's not really what I don't get anything from saying that. It's just my experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess there are
Cool.
people out there who don't believe me, but but anyways, it doesn't matter really. All right. Yeah, thanks for that list. It was longer than my list.
I
Again,
wasn't even counting. I'm just reading stuff that I wrote down
I wasn't
before.
counting too, but I guess it was. I think it was longer. But anyways, this could be multiple blocks. So again, I encourage you to put it out there. It's those were like really great tips out there. So thanks for sharing that. Uh, I
Yeah.
guess we can wrap this up. We do have one more question in the chat, and I've been sort of ignoring it for a while because we sort of moved on to the next topic. But Patrick was once again asking about the case with the search bar, and he's asking whether whether we would still not get the same error, the detached from DOM, even if we did the intercept thing. And the answer for that would be probably not, because as we type in the full text, we fire the request with the query, then the database is still going to respond. It's going to respond for the full phrase and not just part. So what will happen is that once we get that element and we make an assertion, it's not going to get detached, because that assertion is going to happen faster than the element would get detached. And again, as soon as Cypress will finish with one command, it will pass on the information to the next command. So in that case, so the detached from DOM only happens when you have something happening between querying the DOM and making that assertion. So whether that is like getting the parent element, moving on to the child and making assertion, or using within and just trying to look within the context, or just do any kind of steps in between. So yeah, hopefully that answered the question. And if not, feel free to reach out to the Discord, which kind of brings me to the end of this. So thanks everyone who has joined us today. And if you feel like reaching out, you can do that on Discord, or we both have Twitter accounts and LinkedIn accounts, and we'd be happy to connect with you there. So yeah, until next time, goodbye everyone. And when the next time will be, I guess that's something we'll announce on social networks and on the Discord as well. So
Yep.
yeah, Mike, thank you. This has been nice today.
Thank
Nice
you.
seeing you again and chatting with you. Uh,
Always
and
fun.
yeah, this is fun. We're going to be continuing on doing that. I love talking to Mike, and it's a lot of fun. So we'll take a look at some other things next time. All right then, everyone.
All right.
Bye bye.
See you later.